Which means it is showtime. You ready to roll?
Indeed.
All right, here we go. Welcome to the smartest people in the room. Today, we are thrilled to present two of the most gifted, talented, and respected music execs we know. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will do our best to address as many of those as possible during the interview itself. And also, please make sure your chat is set to address speakers and attendees. I want to thank our program sponsors for without their support, we could not keep this free. I want to thank First Horizon Bank, Bufkin Baker, Four Roses Bourbon, the Fairlane Hotel, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Lightning 100, Tennessee Brew Works, Moo TV, Jive Printing, Project Music, and Cushmaster's brand of CBD products. Let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome back my good friend and someone who's well known throughout the entire music industry, the music industry's global ambassador of goodwill, Mr. Ralph Simon. Ralph has enjoyed a spectacular 30-plus year career in a variety of prominent fields. He's a music industry visionary who co-founded major indie leader Zomba and Jive Records. He signed talent and grew a globally successful music publishing company, managed some of the world's top record producers, was EVP at Capitol Records and Blue Note, and foresaw the potential of mobile phones and social media very early on. One of the founders of the global mobile entertainment and mobile social media industry, Ralph is popularly known as the father of the ringtone. He has been consistently at the forefront of mobile media innovation, mobile learning, and social media ideation, next stage AI and mobile video, engaging with global digital business leaders and political innovators across cultures around the world. His reputation as a distinguished interviewer and moderator in the USA and around the world with a captivating interview style consistently attracts plaudits. He correctly predicted that the future belongs to screenagers everywhere who run their social media lives, music streaming, and connecting on their mobile phones. In addition to all of that, he's one of the nicest people I have ever met, and I am blessed to count him as a friend. Welcome back, Ralph. So glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Tom.
And joining Ralph as today's special guest is Merck Mercuriadis. Merck is the Canadian-born music business veteran whose name, well-known and legendary to those in the music industry, has now become familiar to the financial sector as well. Merck is the founder and CEO of Hypnosis Songs Fund Limited, a nearly $2 billion or £2 billion or sterling cap FTSE 250 song management company, which currently houses over 60,000 songs, including Living on a Prayer, Heart of Gold, Go Your Own Way, which Whenever, Wherever, Shape of You, Uptown Funk, Smooth, Single Ladies, Put a Ring on It, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, We Are Family, Le Freak, Don't Stop Believing, among many, many other major hits. In less than 3 years, Merck has steered Hypnosis Songs Fund, a publicly traded UK company invested in music publishing, to a leading position in the global market, building on a career's worth of successful growth and defying trends at a time when words like lockdown and pandemic are commonly heard. Merck remains one of the few business leaders who excelled at positions in record companies and in artist management, thriving through the most dramatic of shifts in music styles and technology, from the analog days of the 1980s, from LPs and CDs, to the MP3 files and streaming of today's digital world. His credits range from head of A&R at Virgin Records in 1986, a position he achieved in his first 3 years in the business, to running an international management agency, spearheading chart-topping discs from the likes of Morrissey, Kelly Osbourne, and Iron Maiden, to guiding the careers of Beyonce, Elton John, Guns N' Roses, Robert Plant, Macy Gray, Mary J. Blige, Joss Stone, and Jane's Addiction, and many others. In 1986, Merck co-founded Sanctuary Music, which grew to become the most formidable independent artist management booking promotion firms in music history. He helped run and revive a number of record labels as well. Since departing Sanctuary in 2006, while continuing to personally manage major stars, including most notably Nile Rodgers and Chic, and working with major songwriters like Diane Warren and The Dream. What a bio. Please welcome these two amazing guests to the smartest people in the room. Take it away, Ralph.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Merck, who's coming to us from Los Angeles. Tom, you're in Nashville. I'm coming to you from London, so this is definitely a multinational, multi-continental approach. And Merck, what a great thrill and treat to have you with us, because you personify what is a music professional in the best sense of the word. When Tom was talking about some of the songs that you've signed up, Living on a Prayer, I'm sure people watching this can even hum that, the chorus line of Heart of Gold, the Neil Young classic, Go Your Own Way, Whenever, Wherever, the Shakira hit. So Merck, welcome. Also to tell people too that just recently you were awarded an honorary professorship at the very prestigious Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester, England. Merck, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ralph. It's a pleasure to be with you. You know, I you know, everyone has a different path that they follow. For me, I was very, very clear from a young age, obsessed with music, even at 6, 7, 8 years old, that I was never going to be a performer or a songwriter or, you know, a creator, as it were. So, you know, at the same time as I was falling in love with Neil Young, I was falling in love with Elliot Roberts. And at the same time as I was falling in love with Led Zeppelin, I was falling in love with Peter Grant. And I went searching for people that surrounded these artists that maybe played roles that I could replicate, or that, you know, would be the appropriate path for me to take. So, you know this from our personal relationship, but, you know, I want everyone else to know that, you know, you're one of those heroes for me. And, you know, you were there from day one of my experience with Iron Maiden, and you helped to guide the band as much as anyone did at very, very crucial times. And I can remember specifically us having a discussion where I was complaining to you because, you know, one of Zomba's other great publishing artists was AC/DC. And I couldn't understand, you know, every time Iron Maiden put out a record, we would sell 2 million copies. The band would, you know, go around the world and play 150, you know, 200 shows in arenas and stadiums. They would sell 1 million t-shirts, but we could never get to that AC/DC success. And I can remember you specifically saying to me, listen, Merck, there's something about the frequency of Brian Johnson's voice that just appeals to America and appeals to people that wouldn't otherwise listen to a hard rock or metal record. And it was very profound for me, because it made me start to think about things that you otherwise, as particularly a young, unsophisticated person, wouldn't be thinking about. You know, I think the world should know just what an important role you played, not only in the development of Zomba and building it into the juggernaut that it was, but specifically in those careers of those great artists and producers that you published and managed, because it's a story that's not sung enough. I know that people have come to know you as the ringtone man and the screenager man, But way before there was a ringtone and way before there was a screenager, you were affecting the success of some of the most important artists in the world, from Bruce Springsteen to AC/DC and Iron Maiden, and some of the greatest producers in the world. And I think that those watching should know this about you.
Wow, Merck, thank you very much. I, I, I don't know what to say other than you're the man that had Bruce Dickinson, the lead singer of Iron Maiden, as the best man at your wedding. That can't be better than that. So we've got
I'm crazy.
That's right. Well, we've got a great audience, and what I thought would be interesting for people that are watching The Smartest People in the Room is just to get a sense of what you decided to do in 2017 when the idea started to gel about you having probably, in fact, has become the most ambitious project of your career, where you decided you were going to form Hypnosis Songs Fund Limited, which you basically styled as a songwriter-focused song management company, which is very new, very unusual. People have heard of music publishers, catalog publishers, but song management, songwriter management was really new. Just take us back and give us some sense of what was swimming in your mind about the financial melodies that were plaguing you to take this to a new level.
Sure, thank you. I was frustrated, to be honest with you. I was frustrated that the songwriter was the low man or woman in the economic equation, and I wanted to do something to change it. And this is something that took place and evolved over a long period of time, because having now been in this business for the better part of 40 years, when I started, not dissimilar to you, 90% of the artists that we would be looking to sign were self-contained, people that were performers, writers, understood what their album cover should look like, what their stage show should look like, and outside songwriters really only influenced about 10% of the releases. When you look at the business over the last 15 years, outside songwriters now influence about 90% of the releases. Ultimately, as I got deeper into the songwriter business, and I saw what songwriters were being paid, distinctly from what record companies were making and what artists were making, I didn't think it was fair, because I think the songwriter undoubtedly delivers the most important component to an artist having a hit. It's the currency of the music industry. If you're buying a record, it's because you like the song at root. If you're going to see an artist play live, it's because you like the songs. If you're buying that artist's t-shirt, it's because you like their songs. And yet, as I said, the songwriter is not being remunerated properly. The more I investigated this, the more I came to the conclusion that a big problem in the songwriter being remunerated properly was that the three biggest publishing companies in the world weren't able to advocate for songwriters to the degree that they would like. And that part of it's very important, to the degree that they would like, because those three biggest publishing companies are owned and controlled by the three biggest recorded music companies in the world. And on the recorded music side of the business, they're getting 4/5 of the revenue. They're getting an 80% gross margin, a 40% net margin. And in general, they own those assets in perpetuity. On the song side of the business, the publishing side of the business, you've got 1/5 of the revenue, 1/5 of the margin. And quite rightly, whether it's through renegotiations and reversions or good management and lawyering in the first place, the songs end up back in the hands of the creators or the co-creators. So these three big recorded music companies, use their leverage and their control over the publishing companies to effectively silence them. You know, Big John, Jody, Guy Moot, they would all rather be fighting for the songwriter to get paid more money. But at the end of the day, they're at the behest of the recorded music companies that own them. And that's not in the best interest of those recorded music companies. Those recorded music companies want as much of the money to flow through to them as possible, because they're the ones that are you know, getting the lion's share of the pie. So when you look at $1 worth of income on Spotify or on Apple, and you see 30 cents going to Spotify or Apple, now you can make an argument that says that that 30 cents should become 27 cents or 26 cents or whatever the case may be. And that argument will be made, and I'm sure we'll get there, but that's not really the material point. The material point is why is 58.5 cents going to the record company? Why are they paying artists on a sale rather than on a license? So, you know, artists are getting maybe 9 cents out of that 58.5 cents. The record company is clearing 50 cents. And yet, you know, the songwriters, of which there might be 3 or 4 on a record and more, and the publishers only get 11.5 cents to split. So I wanted to do something about this, and I realized that it didn't matter how successful my career might have been at that moment. If you start to advocate, you can get swatted like a fly. So I needed to create something, a vehicle that would give me the leverage to fight this fight. So from day one of Hypnosis, when I went in and explained to the big institutional investors that now back us, that these great songs gave predictable, reliable income, and that the income was not correlated to what was happening in the world. People were always consuming music, whether times were good or bad. You know, ultimately what I was looking for was to create a vehicle that would be exactly where it is now and beyond, a multi-billion-pound vehicle that would give me the leverage to fight this fight on behalf of songwriters. And the beauty of it was that there was complete alignment between what was in the best interest of songwriters and what was in the best interest of my investors. Because obviously, if I can get songwriters paid more money, then my investors are going to make more money as well. So that, you know, the motive was obviously to make money for my investors and for myself and the people I'm in business with. But the ulterior motive was to change where the songwriter sits in the economic equation. And there's total serendipity, as I say, between you know, the alignment that exists between the investors and the songwriting community. And that's why I think it's the perfect construct.
So what's quite fascinating in this is that in June, you approached around 144, 145 different companies, suggesting that they invest in the way that you've taken songs as what you called an asset class. That is to say, it could be like gold or oil or industrials or motor vehicles or the basically the super nuts that make up the stock exchanges, whether it's Wall Street or London or Hong Kong or wherever it might be. And you basically went to these 144 companies, and only 38 actually came back to you and said, you've explained something to us whereby you can effectively have what the stock market calls an asset class made out of songs. Tell us how you actually did that when you were speaking to these people. What was the initial reaction?
Sure. So it was, in fact, it was 177 of them in June of 2017. It took about a year to see them all. Out of the 177, there were literally 8 of them that said, never darken our doorstep again. It doesn't matter how successful you make this. This will just never be something that our investors understand.
Right.
And then out of the remaining 169, there were 38 of them that supported us with the first 200 million pounds. But the other 131 that remained all said, listen, we love this. We think it's amazing. We just can't be your guinea pigs. So go away, make this successful, and then come back and see us in due course. So and you know, I don't work from a pitch deck or from, some sort of, presentation or whatever. I just walk in and I explain to people what the opportunity is. And I'm not trying to sell anyone on anything. If they like what I'm saying and they want to be a part of it, that's wonderful. If, like those 8 that said never darken my doorstep again, they don't think that it works for their investors, all well and good. But what I explained to all of them was that, I guess the first thing to say is this, is that I think one of the things that has made hypnosis so successful, and there have been far smarter people than me, whether it's Richard Branson or Chris Wright from the music industry, that tried to take companies public and didn't succeed. And I think the reason why they didn't succeed was that they were asking the stock market to bet that their future was as good as their past was.
Right.
And what I did was something entirely different, which was that I asked the stock market to bet on songs that were already proven, that already had become a part of the fabric of society, already had become extraordinarily successful, already had become of cultural importance, and therefore had predictable, reliable income. And not only was that income, as I say, predictable and reliable, but there's a real desire and thirst in the stock market for uncorrelated assets that have revenues that are not affected by, what Donald Trump might have done or what Boris Johnson might do, so I compare these great songs to golden oil, because that predictability and reliability is the same reason why we invest in golden oil. But golden oil are affected when someone like Donald Trump wakes up and does something stupid, whereas songs are not. Songs are if people are living their best lives, they're doing it to a soundtrack of great songs. Equally well, if they've experiencing challenges, they're taking comfort and they're escaping with great songs. So I was able to demonstrate, and this required millions of pages of data, because that's what they want. They want to see data. They're not going to just listen to an elegant pitch. They want to see data. So we were able to demonstrate to them that these great songs had 10,000 pages every 6 months, with billions of microtransactions on them. You could remove the lumpiness, a sync that might not be repeated, or a settlement from a Spotify or someone like that. But when you really got down to it, there was a baseline of very predictable, reliable income that went back many years. That's the success of hypnosis, is putting the emphasis on the asset rather than putting the emphasis on someone like myself. What I brought to the party, besides the idea, was the access. I was lucky enough to have the relationships with these great artists and songwriters and producers that had enough faith in me to allow me to become the custodian of the incredible children that they gave birth to. But that was really it. Was that the thesis in its simplest form is, these great songs give off predictable, reliable, uncorrelated income. That streaming is, that the songs are available at attractive prices because we had 16 years of technological disruption in the form of illegal downloading. That streaming was going to blow the pie up. And certainly that part of it is very, very important, the backdrop of streaming, because I met Daniel Ek and Martin Lawrenson for the first time in 2009.
Spotify, the founders of Spotify.
I'm sorry?
The founders of Spotify.
Yes, the founders of Spotify, Daniel Ek and Martin Lawrenson. I met them for the first time in 2009. And what I told them then is a very, very key part of hypnosis, which is that I could see that streaming was going to take music from being a discretionary or luxury purchase to being a utility purchase. And if you think about it, we've gone from a construct where a couple of years ago, the benchmark for extraordinary success in our business was the platinum record, right? In the United States, a country with 350, 360 million people in it, 1 million sales. 1 in 360 people immediately tells you that while the average person might like music or might even love music, they were actually happy to be listening to it ostensibly for free on the radio or seeing it on television, but they were never putting their hand in their pocket and paying for it.
Right.
Well, now we've got 100 million homes in the United States that each have a paid music streaming subscription. So
Right.
we've flipped it on the head. Instead of it being 1 in 360, it's about 1 in 4 now that have a paid music streaming subscription or access to it. So that was a key part of the investment thesis. And then that we could actively manage the songs better because we were going to operate on a ratio of only 500 to 1,000 songs per person, as opposed to the sort of 20,000 songs per person that many of the publishing companies have, and that you could bring efficiencies to the collections. And ultimately, that the combination of my pedigree and the ulterior motive of changing where the songwriter sits in the economic equation would also make us the favored buyer of the songwriting community.
So I would just have to say we've got a fantastic group of people that have come in and watching this with us. Christina Callio, great music professional. Corey Sims is with us. David Boxenbaum, David Hughes, Denise, Deborah Newman, Deborah Stella. We've got Haley Madden, Hector Martinez, just a few of the people, Paul Zamek, the famous. So some just interesting, but here's something that I wanted to say to you. Here's a quote from David Israelite, who's the CEO of the National Music Publishers Association in the United States. And he said, Merck is correct that songs have incredible value. And currently, songwriters are not receiving what they deserve because of outdated laws and regulations that prevent them from engaging in free market negotiations. We're so glad he's a partner in our efforts to push for fairness for music creators, since there are no streaming platforms and no music industry without them, as tech companies continue to dwarf songwriters in their size and power. It's more important than ever to work together to safeguard the future of songwriting. And this prompts me to ask you the question, you style yourself as a song management company. So I wanted to find out what you did to get Shakira to agree to basically hand the keys of her creative kingdom over to you with songs like Hips Don't Lie, Whenever, Wherever, She Wolf, even Waka Waka. How, when you sit down with them, what's your pitch?
So I never sit down with anyone whose songs I don't love, right? So that's the important thing to start with is to obviously demonstrate that you care, demonstrate that you're going to be a good surrogate parent for these children and that you care about them as much as their real parents did, that you understand the ethos on which these artists have built their careers, that you understand the decisions that they've made to bring them success, and that you're going to operate in a commensurate way with that. All of these things are because these are very emotional transactions, right? These literally are metaphorical children that these people have given birth to in the form of songs. And then in addition to that, the key part of it is that, I sort of hinted at this earlier, but, I can't play an instrument. I can't sing a song. I can't write a song. The only thing that gives me a seat at the table with these great artists is that I take the responsibility very, very seriously and I make things happen. Therefore, if you're a great artist like Shakira, you've got a great relationship with your record company at Sony. You've got, great booking agents. You've got great, publicists, great management team, et cetera. What I am now is that song manager, right? And I believe that I suppose the key thing about hypnosis is that I believe that these great songs, which are the energy that makes the world go round, should be managed with the same responsibility that I managed artists with, right? You know, when I'm managing Nile Rodgers, I know that if I were to let Nile down, I'm not just letting Nile down. I'm letting, you know, his partner down. I'm letting, you know, his employees down, his band down, you know, his booking agent, everyone else that goes with it, you know, straight through to his foundation. And that's not going to happen on my watch because, you know, as I say, the only reason to have me around is because I make things happen and I get things done. I think that same responsibility, regardless of the fact that people may view these as inanimate objects, I don't. As I say, I view them as the energy that makes the world go around. I think that same responsibility should go into managing songs. And I think the difference between you know, being able to manage songs well and not is bandwidth, right? So it's all about being able to have the bandwidth to be able to focus on a song and get the most out of it. If you don't have the bandwidth, which you can't possibly have when there are 20,000 songs per person, and particularly when your main business is creating new songs, you know, what happens is that these incredible songs languish. So even though they may be songs that are famous and that the world knows and loves, they're not getting the love and the care that they should, and they're not getting the attention that they should. So they languish, and you know, it's left to someone like me to come along and bring them back to life.
So, Shakira ultimately agrees. You work out a deal. She gets paid really a good amount of money. With Neil Young, that was one of your idols as you were growing up, where you basically acquired 50% of his 1,180 songs, his catalog. What do you think was the tipping point other than just the money? Because someone like Neil Young is very proprietary about his children, his creative children, so to speak. I'm just trying to get you to give a sense of what it's like when you're in the room and you're at that point where you want to get the deal. You've got the pressures from the London Stock Exchange and investors and basically people talking about the way that you want to become one of the biggest companies on the stock market. And yet here you are at that fundamental point where it's an is you is or is you ain't with that songwriter. What happened with Neil?
It's fun, particularly when they're your idols.
Right,
No, it starts with an understanding that, you know, what makes Neil Young's songs so valuable, and the same can be said of a few handfuls of other artists. But what makes Neil Young's songs so valuable is not just that he's one of the greatest artists of all time or that he writes wonderful songs, but inherent in the value of those songs is how Neil conducts himself and how he's conducted himself over the last 60 years as he's created his career as an artist. So, you know, if you don't have an understanding that, you know, using an example, a song like Ohio is anti-war, it's anti-violence, it's anti-authority. If you don't understand those things and you were to attempt to put that in a movie that is gratuitous about its views on war or gratuitous to its views on violence or authority, you know, if you did that, you're going to take away from those people that made the song predictable and reliable in the first place, right? Because the fans are the first ones to smell a rat and the first ones to really, you know, pick up on behavior that's not in keeping with the ethos of the artist. So I think in Neil's case, he understood, and it's a relationship that goes back a long time, and, you know, goes back, you know, with Elliot Roberts and Frank Gironda and the team that surround, you know, I mean, God bless Elliot, he's no longer with us, but he was one of the great managers. They knew that I cared, and they knew that I was never going to do something that wasn't in keeping with what Neil would do. And, you know, I guess to some degree, you know, there's people out there that are cynical and that would say that's a competitive advantage. I just see it from a very clear perspective. There are a lot of bankers in suits out there trying to do what I'm doing there are very few, if any, other real music people that have helped to be a part of artists' careers and that really understand the ethos on which these artists have built their careers.
So it sounds to me like when you're speaking to these financial people and you talk about ROI, which is return on investment, when you're talking to songwriters, you've got to talk about ROE, which is return on emotion.
That's correct.
And that's where you find the balance. This is one of the reasons why in 2 years and 2 months, you've taken Hypnosis into one of the biggest companies on the London Stock Exchange, where you're effectively now part of what is called the FTSE 250. This is like the Forbes 500 or Forbes companies on the Wall Street. And basically, you've done this as the FTSE 250 company. You're now one of the biggest companies on the stock exchange. You've got to the point faster than any other company in the history of the London stock market, which has only been going for a few hundred years. And you're now one of the biggest yielders on the market, meaning that there are only around 20 companies who pay bigger dividends to shareholders than you have. And you've established songs as an asset class that's recognized by some of the biggest institutional shareholders in the world, from Aviva, the big insurance conglomerate, to the Church of England. They're one of your investors. So basically, you're scaling like this has never been done before. And what is remarkable is it's done on the basis of songs. All of that experience you had as a manager, plus all of your experience in terms of finding out what touches people culturally. This seems to be the secret sauce.
It is this, we are, to the financial community, we are investors, an investment company. To the music community, we're a music company, and we have the credentials and the pedigree to satisfy both. I'm very proud of establishing songs as an asset class. There were people that were out there buying publishing before me, that I've got great respect for, whether it's people like Larry Mistel or others that were doing this before us. But what I wanted to do was to establish songs as an asset class and to give the prestige to the biggest of having the biggest institutional investors in the world recognizing the importance of these great songs. Because what I understood, what was very clear to me, was that was going to be something that was great, not only for Hypnosis and the songs that we own, but in the fact great for every songwriter that owns their own songs, and for every other company out there that is in the IP business, including Universal, Warner, and Sony. For me, that was a big part of the three things that were important to me were: one, establishing songs as an asset class; two, being able to use the leverage of that to change where the songwriter sits in the economic equation; and three, taking what I consider this broken construct of publishing, where you have these amazing catalogs that people are not putting the time and effort into because they're part of a business that is more focused on creating new songs. Now, I'm all for creating new songs, and I buy new music and listen to new music like crazy. But I think that these should be two different businesses. I think that there should be a song management business and there should be a song creation business.
Right.
And what I'm in is in the song management business. And if you've got a catalog, we own Al Jackson's catalog. That was the drummer for Booker T and the MGs that wrote everything from Let's Stay Together for Al Green to Still in Love with You and Call Me and Green Onions for Booker T, and on several recordings with Otis Redding and Bill Withers and other greats, all of which we attract royalties from. But the vast majority, when we bought Al Jackson, it had very predictable, reliable income, making high six figures a year, but 82% of it was concentrated on one song, Let's Stay Together, right? All of those other amazing songs that I mentioned had been allowed to languish to the point where they were doing next to nothing. And what we've worked to do in the period of time that we've owned the catalog is, to put, Green Onions in a bunch of movies, to put Call Me in the right TV commercials and the right movies and video games. John Legend interpolated Still in Love with You and created a new song out of it that we own 40% of. And, all of that has served to now take, not only have we grown the revenues on Al's catalog by a third by being focused on song management, but crucially, we've taken the concentration of Let's Stay Together from being 82% of the money to being 50% of the money. And the other 50% of the money is now those other 6 other songs that have been brought back to life.
Amazing. We've got some fantastic people on the session with us.
Yeah, I see a lot of old friends here.
That's right. The great
John Delp.
John Delp, a great A&R master.
Someone that knows about songs, that's for certain.
Oh, he's a song person for sure. Nita Raghuwanshi, who's a great music professional in New York. Nick Evans-Lombi, Nick Page, great A&R person. Oysen Lunny from Ireland, Opeyemi Irudumare, Patricia Shields, Patrick Clifford, another great A&R expert. So we've really got an interesting group. Merck, just looking at some of the writers that you've signed, we've spoken about Neil Young, we've spoken about Shakira, but if you look at Lindsey Buckingham, Richie Sambora, of course, Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue, Benny Blanco and Tricky Stewart, and of course, Johnny McDaid, who co-wrote Shape of You with Ed Sheeran. That's one of your copyrights now, right?
Absolutely. I look at, there were people that were concerned about us not being scared to buy newer songs. And the way that I see it is this: is number one, we don't buy anything that's not already proven. So right. even when you look at something like Camila Cabello's Havana, which is one of the newest songs in the catalog, that was already the 2018 global IFPI #1 song in the world for that year before we ever bought it. But the core part of the thesis is that the context of streaming and streaming blowing the pie up is what makes this so attractive. So when you look at streaming behavior, you've got to reflect all of it in your portfolio. So 65% of people that are on streaming services are looking at catalog songs that are, call it 5 years and older, and there's no concentration in that 65% because there are tens of thousands of choices. You might be listening to AC/DC and I might be listening to Iron Maiden, but whether it's famous or whether it's obscure, people have tens of thousands of choices. And of course, we do well because of those songs that you and Tom mentioned, whether it's a Don't Stop Believing or a Go Your Own Way or a We Are Family or whatever. These songs have very, very high demand, so they do well. But then when you look at the other 35% of streaming, it's literally the 300 or 400 hits of the last 6 or 7 years that are being played over and over and over again. So, it's no surprise that Shape of You is the most streamed song of all time. It's weird, but it's no surprise that whether it's Ed Sheeran or whether it's Justin Bieber or Taylor Swift or Ariana Grande or the Chainsmokers, all of whom we own songs by and their best songs, all of these people have more monthly listeners on Spotify than the Beatles do. Right? So you can't tell your investors that you are investing in these great song assets in the context of streaming and not have a portfolio that is balanced and that that recognizes that it's not just old songs but also newer songs that are at the core of consumption. So we own 4 of the top 5 Billboard songs of the last decade, including the #1, which is Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson and obviously featured Bruno Mars. We own Ed Sheeran's Shape of You. We own 11 of the top 30 most streamed songs ever of all time on Spotify, because I think you have to have that balanced view.
And of course, Spotify now, about 40% of Spotify's streaming is catalog repertoire, correct?
I think it's even higher. I think it's about 65% that's catalog, and about 35% that is the last hits of the last 5 or 6 years.
So that affirms your belief in the fact that a great song will always have a long life. Here are a couple of questions that I thought would be interesting to bring in to the framework of this. Dave Park wants to know, would Hypnosis investment strategy conceptually include strategic tech investments as well if they expanded the catalog's scope of use, sync opportunities, or revenue? And I asked that question from Dave Park because I noticed on the song Don't Stop Believing, you licensed that to Peloton, the great Peloton company, very much a big success during the COVID crisis. And I understand from one of my secret sources that they paid $2 million for the use of that particular song synced into a Peloton piece of equipment.
So I can't comment on that publicly, but what in terms of answering Dave's question, the answer is yes, Dave. But the reason why it's a yes and a no at the same time is because there are so many amazing songs to buy out there in the universe that I think are again a part of the fabric of our society. I'm always going to prioritize investing in songs over and above prioritizing investing in tech. There will be an opportunity to invest in tech as we go further, because I guess one of the things that's important to say is that there is a ceiling on the growth of Hypnosis, because ultimately, Hypnosis has been acquisitive, buying all of these great catalogs, and I raise money, I buy great catalogs with it, we actively manage them well, we pay dividends, and we then go back out and do it all over again and again and again and again and again. But that acquisitive streak will only last for the next couple of years. As we get to the end of this next couple of years, we'll be, instead of being at the 60,000 songs that we're at today, we'll be at about 120,000 songs, and we'll have 200 people managing those songs. And I think that is about the perfect size company to be a real song management company. As I said, one of the 3 goals for me was to create the ultimate song management company. I don't think you can manage more than 200 people, and I don't think those 200 people can manage more than 120,000 songs. So what I hope happens is that you see other companies, in the same way that you've got a Universal and a Sony to go against Warner. I hope that there's 3 or 4 other companies that pop up that believe that our ethos and our approach is the right one in terms of song management, and that we end up with some great song management competitors that are doing an equally great job of getting the most out of these amazing songs.
So Merck, a couple of things. We've got one of the attendees today is a great specialist in Latino copyrights, Peggy Dold, who wants to know whether you're doing anything in terms of acquiring copyrights from the Latin world, Latin music world. And then we've got a question from, where are we? Just getting our list, from Michael Winger, who says, what are some of the most critical elements that you pay attention to when you manage a song? I think you've articulated some of that. Here's actually an interesting one. Merck, we're less than a week away from learning the value of global recorded music from the IFPI, the International Record Body, and it's fast closing in on its 2001 peak of $25 billion. But there's a much bigger, more complex figure that Will Page, the well-known rockonomist, as he calls himself, the Scottish economist, former chief economist at Spotify, is working on the global value of all music copyright, which puts it all together, which is due out any day now. How important is it to understand the IFPI, CSAC, and revenues directly licensed by music publishers when it comes to understand your thesis?
So there's three questions there. The first one regarding Latin catalogs. And yes, I mean, I see, obviously, we have Shakira's catalog, which I'm thrilled about. We have Enrique Iglesias' catalog, which I'm thrilled about. We own many of Jennifer Lopez's best songs. We own our share of Despacito. We're about to own more of it. But obviously there are catalogs, amazing Latin catalogs that translate internationally. And we're in those. I think that some of the ones that I just mentioned fit that description, but there are also amazing catalogs from the Latin world, including South America, that may not travel as globally as into, say, English speaking audiences or other domestic audiences around the world, but at the same time are incredibly attractive songwriters and artists. And I'm thinking of 3 or 4 key Brazilian artists and songwriters that I'm very keen to buy, and the same thing with some Mexican writers and Spanish writers as well. So yes, you can expect us to be deeper into that market, that is, if we could say, inward facing as far as the Latin world is concerned. The same thing with some French repertoire. The same thing with a lot of African repertoire as well. Yes, I'm very keen, and I think it's important to be in those worlds. With regard to the IFPI, it's critical. Going back to the comment that I was making before about our investors, data is everything, right? And of course, one of the things that we can do right now is we can look young people in the eye and tell them that the best days of the music industry are in fact in front of them, not behind them, which we would not have been able to do, as short as 5 years ago. 5 years ago, our industry was still, going backwards. Now we're not only going forwards, but as you point out, it's quite likely that in the matter of a week we're going to have data that tells us that we're the biggest we've ever been, and that's a thrill, of course, because people, there's a few people out there that have thought that we were crazy to be doing what we're doing, but content has always been king, and I've never known a world where, well, certainly one of the things that I'm very aware of is, there are several catalogs that I can mention over the last 30 or 40 years where when those catalogs were sold, people said they're crazy, right? When Marty Bandier bought the Libra Stoller catalog at the price that he paid for it, everyone thought he was insane. And Marty turned out to be the smartest man in music at that time, because he bought one of the greatest catalogs, and he bought it at, in fact, what was a price that didn't reflect the true value of it. And within a couple of years, people could see how smart he was for doing what he did. And you can't go wrong with great songs. One of the things that I've had magazines that are trying, or reporters that are trying to figure out what's wrong with this equation. And I keep telling them the same thing, which is that, look, this is an assets-based business, right? We're buying the most, if this were a Monopoly game, we're buying Park Place and Boardwalk over and over and over again. These are some of the most important assets in music history. And that's what's key is, and again, that's what gives my investors comfort, is that they understand that it's not an idea that they've put money into, it's actually assets that they're putting money into, real tangible assets that have a long and illustrious, predictable, reliable income.
So a lot of publishers were questioning the fact that you were paying a very high multiple for some of these catalogs. But when I think about it, in 1999, Michael Jackson was paid $95 million for 50% of the Beatles publishing rights, which was bought by a wonderful publisher, a guy by the name of Richard Rowe. And I want to ask you, talking about people actually, the people in your team, Kenny McPherson. Tell us about Kenny, because you bought Kenny's company, Big Deal Music. Just to give us a little sense of that. And
So all of the people that are in the company, whether it's Amy Thompson, who's the chief catalog officer, who was one of the great artist managers in our business, and again, a total disruptor, or Kenny McPherson, or now Richard Rowe, Ted Cockle, who
Richard Rowe has joined Hypnosis.
Richard Rowe is now part of Hypnosis. He's
Fantastic.
our new executive vice president.
Oh, great news. He's a wonderful publisher.
So, all of these people, right down to people like Tom Stingemore, who's our, UK global head of sync, and Patrick Joyce, who's our man in Europe and South America, or Joe Magini here in the US. The reason why I bought Kenny's company was because it was a company, first of all, Kenny is one of the greatest publishers that our business has ever known, not dissimilar to Richard Rowe. But Kenny had built this team with him, Pete Robinson in Nashville, Dave Ayers in New York, Casey Robeson in Los Angeles, and Jamie Soretta in Los Angeles. This team had about 50 years of experience together, and had a chemistry about them that meant that I wasn't starting from scratch. I was starting, as I say, with a team of people that had about 50 years of experience between them, and that, that maybe people saw them as a traditional publishing company, but what I saw in them was that, in fact, they were managers. Kenny was a guy that was a manager before he was ever a publisher, the same for most of them on the team, and that I could turn them into, my vision of song management rather than traditional publishing. And that made them unique to me. They were different than a company like a Pulse, who I have tremendous respect for, that Concord bought. But Kenny and team, that was a case where I was prepared to pay a premium to have a team that had that level of experience and that could be a part of what I was building, as opposed to starting from scratch and catching up to them, 5 years later or something. And, Kenny, again, these are people that have built their careers based on integrity rather than based on hype, and that take responsibility seriously and get things done. Richard Rowe, I think, is the same no nonsense guy. Ted Cockle had made Virgin EMI the #1 record label in the UK for each of the last 8 years before he joined us, and was someone that again, I felt in my experience with Ted as a record company head, that he had all of the right qualities to be a part of our song management. And Amy, Amy transformed the electronic music business, EDM as they like to call it. What she did with Swedish House Mafia, what she did with DJ Snake. I have no problem, with the greatest respect and no hype, saying that she's the closest thing to a Peter Grant of her generation in terms of someone that went out there and made sure that those DJs got paid properly, and took immense care of her artists. And I think she probably got to a point where she didn't need people talking back to her anymore. So she loves applying the same care and passion to songs, knowing that she can now get to bed at midnight instead of getting to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Merck, here's an interesting question from a great publisher, Tim Whipperman, who's actually based in Nashville. And Tim is dyed-in-the-wool, great song person and a great publisher. He says, here in Nashville, along with purchasing the legacy catalog, the futures rights are an important component of the writer relationship and acquisition. Is that a strategy that's part of your future thinking?
It is indeed. So that, and he's nailed it right on the head, in that this has been a uniquely Nashvilleian construct that now is making its way into many of the deals that we're making, where there were certain songwriters that wanted to sell their catalogs, and you'll see us announcing some of these in due course. but that also wanted to be a part of the future. And we've made those deals, and we're now making those deals in other genres as well, where we're taking great songwriters, buying their catalogs, and doing future deals with them at the same time.
Something I wanted to ask you about, which seems to be a trend that's pretty much a modern day trend. When Bob Dylan did an album called Tempest, he wrote every single song and he was just the sole songwriter on that album. When Beyonce did, I think Lemonade was the album, there were 40 writers collectively on that album. Are you finding now that there's more of a trend for multiple songwriters per song written? What's your sense when you are looking at it from your cockpit seat?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because Bob Dylan's Tempest, believe it or not, it's interesting that you choose that record, because it's the last album that was a Billboard top 100 album of the year that didn't have an outside songwriter on it, right?
Oh.
Every Billboard top 100 album of the year over the last 7 years has had an outside songwriter on it, even the likes of Coldplay. And therefore you're right. It's there's a probably the most important songwriter in the world right now, in terms of delivering hits, is a guy called Andrew Watt, or Watt for short. And Watt's amazing. He's written or co-written everything from Senorita for Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello, to Havana, to Miley Cyrus's last record with amazing songs like Prisoner on it, and Midnight Sky, and Dua Lipa, amazing stuff. But at the same time, he remains a young rock god that cares about things like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam with a passion that is rare. And Watt was saying to me the other day that when he's writing a pop song, he absolutely understands what the radio sounds like at this moment in time, and what those kids that are consuming those songs over and over and over again, exactly what they want. Not to say that there's a formula to it, but he knows what they're looking for. At the same time, if he's making a rock record with someone like Ozzy Osbourne, he understands that that is a passion, performance-based idiom, right? It's what he's looking for when he's making those records is performance. And I think that that's really the difference is, when you look at someone like Bob Dylan, it's, it doesn't have to be, Bob Dylan obviously is, whether you chose Bob Dylan, whether you chose John Lennon and Paul McCartney, I'm not sure that there is a more important songwriter in the world. You can talk about Brian Wilson, you can talk about Robbie Robertson, you can talk about John Fogerty, you can talk about Elton John and Bernie Taupin, et cetera. There are many people that belong at the very top, Joe Strummer, et cetera. But in terms of Bob Dylan and the Beatles, that's, when you're Greek, you're taught to pray with your three fingers, and your three fingers represent the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And for me, those three fingers were the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and the Rolling Stones. Right? That's who I was praying to. But with someone like Bob, it is, Watt is absolutely correct. It's a performance-based level of songwriting, right? It's you don't have to get everything about the song perfect. It's about, as you called it, it's about the emotion, right? But the ROE. But along with that ROE, there's also pop perfection. And pop perfection, which I think is ultimately, what Lemonade is. It's very hard to argue against that record from the perspective of pop perfection versus performance perfection from Bob Dylan. And performance perfection is not the quality of someone's voice and whether someone has the best voice or not. It's, do they connect with you emotionally? Because the ROE is everything in this business. You know, the greatest songs are all about, you know, like if we take a Don't Stop Believing, which I'm very proud has just hit 1 billion streams on Spotify, and is the only song in the world other than Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody that is not from the last 10 years to hit 1 billion streams on Spotify. The Beatles don't have a 1 billion stream song. You know, the Rolling Stones don't, Elvis doesn't, Elton doesn't. You know, when you look at that, you know, it's about that, you know, emotional connection that people feel to a song like Don't Stop Believing.
Amazing. So, Merck, I wanted to try a little something with you. I'm going to give you a couple of subjects, but I want you to just give me a 1-sentence response to each. I think it might be interesting for you to just exercise your ROE and your ROI and your ROU.
The press have described me as loquacious, Ralph. How can I possibly do 1 sentence?
No. Okay, well, anyway, so here we go. Selena Gomez and the song Bahia Conmigo.
Yeah, amazing. You know, it's big hit. And, you know, ultimately, again, you know, you're talking about an artist that, you know, I'm not sure what she's at, you know, 60, 70 million monthly listeners on Spotify. There is a perfection to this pop perfection that I'm talking about. And, you know, it's as valid as any music.
Okay, Travis Scott on Fortnite earned $20 million for his participation, and Little Nas, that had that incredible single last year, got 33 million viewers. I think it was also on Fortnite, if I'm not mistaken. Any views on those two particular events that really changed the perception of the way that there was wide multi-million viewership, kind of like BTS got for their virtual reality performance recently?
Yeah, it's incredible. And obviously it's a massive opportunity for people that are rights holders and for songwriters that have their own songs, because as these songs, you know, what we now need to do, and, you know, I didn't get an opportunity to praise the work that David Israelite is doing, not only for the NMPA, but on behalf of songwriters. You know, we just need to make sure that songwriters are being paid properly as these uses take place. And by properly, I mean the most possible. You know, Little Nas X, of course, has had, you know, arguably the biggest song of the last 10 years. You know, Travis Scott, it doesn't surprise me that he's at the forefront of, you know, expanding the boundaries. When I met Travis Scott for the first time about 8 or 9 years ago, he walked into our studio in the Valley and he had 9 people with him. And these 9 people, he was just a kid from Texas. He walked in with 9 people. They all had cameras. They all had notepads. They all had, you know, different disciplines that they were there. And it was like, Travis, who are all these people? And he was like, that's my crew. And it's like, how do you afford to pay for these people when you don't even have a record out or a deal yet? And he was just like, they believe in me. And that one wants to be a clothing designer, and she sees that I'm a good route to that. That guy wants to be a filmmaker. He sees that I'm a good route to that. So I've just put a team of people in play. And that's why, you know, when you look at his success and the social media following that he has, and the fact that he's, you know, not only successful, but incredibly influential, it's, you know, he knew what he was doing from day one.
Amazing. Here's an interesting one on NFTs. Those of you that are watching, I know Jonah Adelsberg has asked us a question. Would love to hear your thoughts on the future of NFTs related to catalog acquisition. And in fact, Merck, DJs like 3Lau and Steve Aoki have just sold their NFTs for 7-figure sums. The Kings of Leon just racked up $2 million selling them bundled with their new album. And the auteur Grimes, the girlfriend, wife, partner of Elon Musk, recently sold a bunch of NFT affiliated artwork for around $6 million in just 20 minutes. Is there a dirty little secret? Is this going to lead to a way in which music rights could be transformed with NFTs?
Yeah, I think that obviously there's a tremendous amount of heat and excitement about NFTs. I think you only have to go back 6 weeks, and NFTs were not a part of people's daily vocabulary. Right now, they are a part of people's daily vocabulary. And there has to be some caution at the same time as I guess the best way to put it is that the enthusiasm needs to be tempered, because you're dealing with incredibly valuable copyrights,
Right.
and you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing with it. So I've got 10 people in an office right now that are zooming me and screaming at me about doing things with NFTs. We're not going to, will we lose an opportunity or two that might have proved to be profitable? That's possibly true, but to me, it's more important going back to the Neil Young of it all or the Shakira of it all, to do things that are representative of the ethos that those artists built their careers on, than to just do something reckless. Because this is definitely the old West right now, right? There's a gold rush, and as we know, there'll be a lot more people that are burnt in this gold rush. But to be clear, those tempered comments are there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm from me, and I think that you're going to see NFTs become very, very important, not just at this moment in time, but deep into the future. We just have to get it right.
Well, I think that we are gradually coming towards a close, Tom, if I think our clock is correct. But just a couple last little comments, because I know that you've got to go. TuneCore, DistroKid, SoundCloud, great leading edge operators. And if you've got any comments on those, because they're also in the business of working with indie songwriters and music creators that are going to be creating the paving stones of some of the future of songs and LOE. Finally, just your little story about what happened at Abbey Road with Stara, which is now turning out to be a great thing that you basically directed.
So with regard to the likes of DistroKid and TuneCore, anyone that is assisting and giving new artists the opportunity to put their work in front of the public and get the public to vote on it, yay or nay, is magic as far as I'm concerned. I think that DistroKid are particularly very sexy at this moment in time, because they appear to have very good taste as well. I don't know them, but they certainly appear to have very good taste in the work that they're doing. But as I say, all of those services I think are crucial when we think about what TuneCore did, from the opportunity of being an aggregator for artists to be able to put their songs straight up on the Apple iTunes store and start making 10 grand a month, 20 grand a month, 30 grand a month, real money for young independent artists to then build their careers from. I think they all need to be commended. With Stara, Stara is one of the most important songwriters in the world today. What she did with Maroon 5 on Girls Like You, with Camila Cabello on Havana. She just won the Grammy Award with The Dream the other night for Megan Thee Stallion's Savage remix with Beyonce. She's unbelievable. And what I wanted to do with her at Abbey Road was to take her from her comfort zone, which was someone that was used to making records on a computer in their bedroom and sharing files with other people, all of which is amazing. But I just wanted to give her a bigger palette. So suddenly she's able to walk into Abbey Road, Studio 2, where the Beatles made all that incredible music. And she's got Nile Rodgers on the guitar, and she's got Giorgio Tuinfort on the keyboard and the piano, who's, Giorgio Tuinfort is arguably the most underrated songwriter in the world. and young people from all over the world that she hadn't met before. And it just gave her the opportunity, as someone that's not only a great songwriter, but that's a great solo artist as well, to really work from a different palette, as I said, and to figure out that there were some exciting opportunities in front of her that she may not have considered before. And that's what our goal ultimately is, whether it's with the classic songwriters or whether it's with newer songwriters that are at the top of their game, like Star or Andrew Watt or whoever it may be, is to give them the environment that they can be confident in and do their very best. I don't want people thinking about, is the sound going to be good, or is the food going to be good, or anything like that. I want all of those boxes to be ticked. So all they have to think about is, can I walk into that room and be the best version of me that I can possibly be?
Right. Wow, what a wonderful way to come to the conclusion. We're basically speaking about great songwriters. Merck, just have to say an incredible thank you to you. Just looking at the Hypnosis logo, the very notion of why you named the company Hypnosis, the way that you're working on this and really believe in the future of the songwriter and the magnificence of the songwriter. What we've got to do is we've got to get Maris to actually have a special songwriting committee to come up with a Grammy for songwriting, which I know is something that you have been mooting for. Maybe we need to use the 3 fingers of prayer to say, songwriter, songwriter, songwriter. That's the way we need to do it, Merck. Let's go for it.
Thank you, Ralph. I really appreciate this opportunity, but I now have to make a deal with you, which is that you let me come back and I interview you about your career.
Well,
I'll answer for him. Yes.
Hi, Roberta Chorus. I see all kinds of people that I know here, all kinds of friends. Thank you all for joining me.
We've got a great group of people, Tom. Thanks so much for putting this all together. Just a great range of professionals, Merck, on this session.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I really appreciate everyone joining in. Ralph, thank you for it's a thrill for me always to be with you. Tom, thanks for making it possible, and I wish you all lots of success.
Well, thank you to you both. Ralph, once again, you've been masterful in that interview seat. And Merck, the thing that is so incredible about hearing you up close and in person like this is just how you think and what an incredibly wickedly sharp mind you have for songs. I mean, you are a walking encyclopedia of your business, which it's no wonder you're that successful. So hats off to you, man, and keep doing it, because you're making more money for more publishers and songwriters. So please keep going.
All the best, everybody. Be safe.
Thank you, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.